Hi, my name is Lisa Watson, and I will be talking today about the Naga culture in Nagaland, India. The Naga people, I feel I should be talking about in the traditional sense, the tribal sense, and then today's society, as they're two very different cultures. Um, Traditionally, the Naga were very isolated from the outside world. They lived high up in the mountainous regions of the Naga Hills, so we're 2 to 6,000 feet above sea level, dense jungle vegetation. So they really didn't have any contact with the outside world until the British started coming in the 1800s. Um, the culture itself was tribal. They were set up based on different clans living in villages, and then several villages would form one tribe. They were a warrior like society. They would fight within each other's villages, they would fight tribe versus tribe. Um, and one of their prized things was their ability to fight, to capture heads from other tribal members, and bring power into their village. They would fight in a guerrilla style, so spears, machetes, um, and their villages were set up for optimal defense. They were set up high on hills, where they could see other tribes approaching to attack. The society itself, the Naga people, it was an egalitarian society, at least among the men, or the women too. I mean, they all had equal ranking. When they farmed, when they would get meat, everything was distributed evenly. So, no one went hungry. It was really a communal type of society. They had a headsman that would be in charge of the tribe, but it wasn't a position of power. It was more someone that would mediate, run meetings, run religious ceremonies. It's a patriarchal society. So everything is the power, the control, and the community is held on the man's side. Men did the religious ceremonies. Women were not allowed to participate. Men would own all the property. Men would also do community meetings, and women would not be allowed to attend. The um, possessions were all on the patrilineal side. So everything would be passed down from the man's side of the family. Um, Things would be inherited while the head of the house was still alive. So, if a man, for instance, had 3 sons, the eldest son would get property first when he got married, and then the younger sons would also get some as they got married. But daughters did not receive anything. Um, Daughters really didn't have any rights. I mean, they were able to choose a husband, but that's about the extent of a woman's right in the Naga society. Even women that were divorced or widowed, they would lose everything they had, including their children, which would stay with the husband's side of the family. Um, the gender roles were very specific in the Naga community. Women took on the traditional roles of being mother, nurturer, household manager, where the men obviously were village protectors. They're also craftsmen, great craftsmen. They were known with their art. They created ornate wood sculptures. They would weave baskets out of grasses and build houses made out of bamboo, and jewelry. Just they had this wonderful skill of melting metal and making beautiful jewelry, little heads to symbolize every head that they had taken in a raid. Um, the or agrarian culture, so they depended on the land for everything that they had. Pretty much everything within the village came from within the village. So um, any meat would be hunted from the jungle. They practiced zooming with their farming. So they would go in, cut down the jungle vegetation, create a field, plant it, and then move on to another area the following year. So they weren't always replanting the same portion of the jungle over and over again. Um, and again, being an egalitarian society, everyone would work evenly. The whole village would be out working the rice fields. Anyone that was too old to work would watch the kids that were too young to work. Everyone participated equally the the um, in the success of the village. As far as relationships, marriage and sex in the society, sexual activity, promiscuity was encouraged among the youth. So age of 12 was considered sexually mature in the Naga culture, and between 12 and 17, before the youth would get married, they were allowed, free reign, basically on relationships. Um, the age of 17 was generally the age when people would get married, and marriage itself was considered highly valued institution within the society, and fidelity was encouraged. There's two types of marriages in the Naga culture. There's a ceremonial one, which would require a bride price, omens, a broker would be used in order to establish the relationship. The other marriage ceremony was non-traditional, so if you had some of these relationships where the promiscuity was going on, if a couple stayed together for more than 24 hours, they were considered married. Education was very important among the Naga, and not education in the sense like we carry it today with reading and arithmetic, but oral history. They would pass down their oral history through folk tales, folk songs. Parents were responsible for educating their children about social ethics and behavior. When boys or girls came of age, they would move out of their parents' house and into a dormitory, a morong for boys and a tsuki for girls. And there they were taught gender-specific customs and traditions. They were organized by rank, depending on certain skills that they had obtained. Religion wasn't necessarily an organized thing in the Naga culture, but it was rich in their culture. So they were animists. They believed there was one God, sustainer, creator, God, but they also believed in deities. They believed in benevolent spirits and ancestral spirits. They would offer food and beverages to these spirits. They would go out head hunting. They believed that by cutting the head off of someone, that the spirit resided in the skull, and by bringing that skull back to their community, they were bringing power and prosperity into their community. And they would offer things to these skulls, rice beer, things to appease the spirits to keep their community prosperous. Much of their religious beliefs were based on human needs, biological functions such as fertility. Headhunting was a rite of passage, so a male in the community was not considered to be a man until he hunted a head. Often would be called a woman until he actually brought a head back into the village. Tattooing was a big symbol of pride, and it would describe certain life accomplishments and ranking within the community itself. Women, when they got married, would have their foreheads tattooed. Certain things, childbirth, would be symbols on their arms. The men themselves, full face tattoos, neck tattoos, would symbolize how many raids they had been to, how many heads they had taken. They would hold competitions. They were, just your typical community, things that would draw people in, festival type things to celebrate, where their warrior type skills were showcased, wrestling, javelin throwing, shot put, tugs of war, things that would showcase their warrior culture. British came in, colonialized India, started bringing some of their influences in. Biggest change that happened to the Naga, though, in 1950s when the American evangelicals came over and they brought Christianity with them. They brought Western customs. They brought the English language. 95% of Naga today are Baptists. So they've lost a lot of the culture that they had. Headhunting, no longer an okay thing. So headhunting, their folk tales, their folk songs, all of their rituals have pretty much been eradicated. Even their language, the official language of Nagaland is English. They value book education. They're, even amongst the women, are going on beyond college degrees, many holding master's degrees, PhDs. Women are not allowed to own property. Not much has changed in that sense. Women still don't have a lot of rights in Naga culture and society. It's still very patriarchal, still very patrilineal. But in today's society, things that had been valued, 100 years ago amongst the tribe has disappeared. There's a great push among the people in the Naga youth, anyways, to get in touch with these Naga tribal leaders, these older people, and document their tattoos, relearn these folk songs and things that had been lost with the last few generations. So, overall, there's a lot of positive influences that were brought on by Christianity. I mean, it reunited reunited united the entire community. So once there had been multiple tribes, there's now 17 known tribes, and they all speak English. And there's a big uniting factor with the Christianity brought in. Education is a good thing, but they have lost a lot of the things that have made them Naga, unique to themselves and their own culture, that they're working on trying to get back. Thanks.